Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Sean. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Today, I will continue to talk about Xi's Fortress China strategy, a strategy driven by fear of color revolution. There are four major components to achieve self-efficiency for China: core technology, energy, food, and finance. The development of core technologies was not something that could be left up to the free market, but had to be led by China's government, the so-called Little Giants Initiative. At a national meeting held this month in the eastern province of Jiangsu, China named 8,997 enterprises as little giants, putting them in line for tax breaks so they can help China compete with the US and other Western powers. In a letter to the meeting, Xi said he hoped that such enterprises will play a more important role in stabilizing supply chains. Xi's ambition is that the little giants will help to indigenize China's technology industry. For example, Tianjin Saishan's nano knife is indicative of a broad trend that is reshaping China's economic relationship with the rest of the world. The nano knife is designed to target prostate cancer without invasive surgery. Tianjin Saishan was given the official title of Little Giant in 2020, meaning it qualifies for preferential treatment in return for helping China to climb the technology ladder. According to an executive at the company who declined to be named, this Chinese version of a cutting-edge treatment is part of a drive to reduce the need for imported medical technologies. The government requires local hospitals to, where possible, replace foreign medical equipment with domestic ones. That is a boon for us, says the executive. In the past few years, China has overseen the establishment of more than 1,800 so-called government guidance funds, which have raised more than 6 trillion renminbi, that's $900 billion, to invest largely in tech sectors that Beijing deems strategic. These funds are mostly run by provincial and local governments or by state-owned enterprises. Analysts skeptical over the long-term efficacy of Beijing's attempts to pick winners. Companies had to be vetted by local governments in the first instance, opening up to the potential for favoritism and corruption. At the same time, government officials can be poor assessors of a company's prospects, especially when it involves technology that is hard to understand. Such concerns do not mean the Little Giants program will fail in its objectives to foster greater self-reliance, but just that considerable waste and efficiency may be built into the system. Other than technology, there lies another big vulnerability for China: the supply of energy. China's current energy self-sufficiency rate is about 80%. That leaves some 20% of supply, mostly in the form of imported oil and gas, vulnerable to external shocks. Beijing is particularly concerned about the shipping routes through choke points such as the Strait of Malacca, where US naval power remains supreme. On a visit to an oil field in northern China late last year, Xi made a clarion call that has echoed through the official media ever since. Our energy rice bowl must be held in our own hands, he said. Mitchell Maiden is a director at the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies. She believes Beijing is adopting an increased focus on renewables such as solar and wind as part of the solution. China looks at the global geopolitical situation and assesses the vulnerabilities around supply chains, enhancing and entrenching its dominant position in renewable manufacturing and supply chains, as well as its deployment domestically, makes a lot of sense, says Maiden. This explains the fact China is on track to achieve early a national plan to source about 33% of its power from renewables by 2025. But it will be many years before its vulnerabilities over seaborne oil and gas imports are shored up, analysts say. Agriculture is another vulnerable part that China depends on the outside world. As its population has grown and agricultural land usage has shifted from grains to more lucrative crops, China's food security has plummeted over the past 3 decades. The 3 main food oils, soybean oil, peanut oil, and rapeseed oil, in 2021 only 1/3 of the demand was satisfied by domestic production, down from more than 100% in early 1990s. All Chinese leaders have stressed the importance of food security. The language and the tone has hardened under Xi. Since the opening of trade war by the US under Donald Trump and the 2019 publication of the Food Security White Paper by China's State Council, food security and national security have since been clearly conflated by senior leaders. The goal of stable food self-efficiency has been increasingly described in similar terms to other Fortress China ambitions. Key policies on grain output focus on the need for ever greater yield, greater protection of arable lands, more efficient water use, and other big water-saving projects. China aims to maintain its self-sufficiency in major grains. According to analyst Trina Chen at Goldman Sachs, the most significant policy change will be the introduction of the first generation of genetically modified seeds in China. GM agriculture is a policy that has been strongly resisted. Up to this point, China only uses GM cotton seeds. Since the Chinese acquisition of Syngenta, the attitude has shifted. Syngenta is the Swiss agriculture group whose large business portfolio includes seeds and the development of domestic genetically modified producers. The last important component of Fortress China is the dominance of the dollar. For Beijing, one of the most alarming features of the Western sanctions on Russia was the exclusion of some of its financial institutions from SWIFT, a global messaging system that is central to international settlement. Chinese officials have long warned of such a scenario. Zhou Chengjun is the director of the People's Bank of China's Institute of Finance. He wrote in May last year, "When Americans frequently use sanctions and overemphasize the interests of the US while ignoring its international responsibilities, more and more nations hope to reduce their reliance on the dollar." About 3/4 of China's trade is invoiced in dollars, which means it relies on access to SWIFT. Beijing's solution is to internationalize the renminbi, its own currency. But so far, its efforts have met with limited success. Beijing also promoted a digital renminbi. Similarly, it has been slow. In the short run, it pains Beijing not to fall foul Western sanctions imposed on Russia over its invasion of Ukraine, but its focus on decoupling from the dollar has sharpened. China's emphasis on self-reliance has been a long time coming. From about 2015 onwards, Xi's administration placed increasing emphasis on self-reliance in industrial supply chains. Last year's launch of China's 14th Five-Year Plan and the introduction of a policy called dual circulation only intensified it. The dual circulation stressed China's need to rely on internal dynamism. Since then, a rising tide of US sanctions on Chinese companies, geopolitical divisions flowing from China's support for Russia, and a surge in tensions over Taiwan have reinforced the trends underpinning Fortress China. Xi Jinping administration is determined to decouple from the West and to build Fortress China. Such a heavy emphasis on domestic technology poses a significant risk to those multinational companies. Be prepared and be ready as well. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.